started. And I put copies there, getting some more copies from. So get the rest to everybody. And we got quite a few public records requests. I tried to group them on how they want to speak. Public comment. And so I think we're okay.
Well said.
Hunt. Okay.
Same thing.
Hey, good morning. How are you guys? Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Good Monday morning. And let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we note that all members are present this morning. We have a full agenda. I know there's some matters concerning the city of East Cleveland. I'm going to put those matters to the end of our docket and get to our business. Our staff is busy getting prepared for the November election, and the matters here relating to that specifically. So I will move to approve the minutes from the August 15th, 2020 board meeting. If there's a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any question or comment? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'll move to, and Mr. Cleary is going to come up here, but I'll just make a motion, ask for a second, and Mr. Cleary can present to us. We can ask him any questions. I'll move to acknowledge the post-election audit summary for the August 2nd, 2022 primary election. If there's a second.
Second.
Mr. Cleary.
Good morning, Brian Cleary, manager, ballot department. On September 6th, the ballot department conducted 2 risk-going post-election audits for the August 2nd, 2022 primary election. At the certification meeting, 2 races were randomly selected. They were for the Democrats, State Central Committee, District 23 woman, and for Republicans, State Central Committee, District 24 man. There were a total of 92,042 ballots cast for the election. A hand count was conducted of 3,284 ballots in the 2-hour contest. The accuracy rate for both post-election audits was 100%. And underneath that, you have a summary for each of the individual races, and then after that, you have the breakdown of each individual batches for the amount we count. I'll take any questions.
Was there anybody in attendance, Mr.
There
Cleary?
was not.
Okay. Well, that's something we publicly post.
We publicly posted, and we had people that were ready. Welcome anybody, but no one showed up. So.
Any questions for Mr. Cleary? Okay, thank you for that important report. Seeing no questions, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. And on to, I will move to acknowledge the early in-person voting precinct election officials performance report from the August 2nd, 2022 primary election. If there's a second.
Second.
Steve, would you want to provide us a summary, sir, please?
Steve Dell, D-O-E-L-L, supervisor in CBS. Well, as the report indicates, voting went very smoothly, and we have a solid and reliable team. We had 3,156 voters, 62 of which were takeaways, and those were the voter actually takes the ballot with them and casts it later. And that also includes 16 curbside voters in the takeaways.
I'm sorry, Steve, did you say 62 or 61?
62.
Our report, I thought our report said 61. Maybe I'm mistaken on page, your last page. Well, those are provisionals. Oh, I see 62. My apologies. I see 62 at the bottom, the 61 provision. Thank you.
The format of this report is set by the Secretary of State, so I'm kind of boxed in as far as what I'd like to tell you about. So I kind of added a few things in section 3, talking about election day, what happens here on election day. You know, we've been spending a month voting people, but on election day, voters are directed to go to their polling locations and vote. But a lot of folks do come down here anyway. So we decided to kind of be a little methodical, and we actually kept track of what we were doing. So how many people were coming in and what kind of services they needed. So we tracked, we had 136 voters that were active. We look them up in the system, make sure that they're an active regular voter, and give them instructions on where to vote. Sometimes they're not even sure where their polling location is. I think it is, a lot of people just get accustomed to coming down and they forget that on election day they got to vote. So thought we would keep track of that. We actually had 8 provisional voters that had issues with the registration, so we voted them provisional. We had 4 voters that had some issues with their absentee. Might have been a challenge on their ballot. They weren't quite sure how to handle that. We got those resolved. And we even had a voter who didn't realize she had voted already and was instructed to vote at the polls, instructed to vote provisional. She was a little concerned about that. She came down here and we looked her up, and she had voted the first day of voting. So that got resolved. And then we had 2 hospital voters that where a family member took the ballot out to the person that was in the hospital. That day is always kind of an odd one, and I would probably start keeping track of things and what we're doing that day.
Well, thank you. It is. I know you have this November election coming up soon. You'll be staffing for that. Will you double your size in personnel, Steve, for that, or do you have more people down there working?
Yeah, we're trying to get in 16 operators, and we'll have a few that will work just a 10 to 2 schedule, a part-time schedule to fill in during lunch, so we can always have a full staff then. And it seems to be working out. There's some people that can't work a full day. Half day is great for them, and it's all really working out well for us. And then we'll have a couple other people for support, helping with the DS200s and just kind of maintain flow.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Shaw?
There's just a comment to Tony and Tony, and we see this a lot on just every election, the last day or the day before, where we're only open that half day, but people come down and they still think, or even on election day, rather, they think, on election day, where they still think that, the main office operates as a polling location. I mean, maybe there's something where when we identify that early in-person ends on this day, maybe a reminder that you should go to your polling locations and not come here, because we don't operate as a polling location on election day. I don't know. I mean, I've heard this come up a couple of times, when we have folks come down on election day and they still think they can vote. Maybe just a reminder to folks that, we are not,
We do.
they need to go to,
Yeah.
but on the website, is there something on the website, or? Okay, I know we remind people.
But I think that would be like when the media is hungry for, hey, how can we help? I think that's a really good
Yeah.
Monday evening story to put out there.
Right.
Tomorrow, please
Right.
go to your local location. If you're not sure, call us, go to our website.
Because that worries, people will come here, then be told, oh, you have to go to your location. They've already made it here. They don't want to go, so they vote provisionally. I think we give them a provisional. We vote them provisionally, or we don't vote them at all.
Unless they have an address change.
Okay, so we could be losing voters then if they're showing up here. So just a thought about how to, make sure people realize on election day, you can't come here and vote. So, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Dole. Any other questions for Mr. Dole? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of acknowledging of that excellent report, signify by saying aye.
Hi.
All right, motion passes unanimously. And let's move on to, we have the acknowledgement of the PEL performance report from August 2nd, 2022 primary election. Good morning.
Good morning, Arlene Robinson Statler, Assistant Manager with the Training Department. And I submitted the precinct election official performance summary for August 2nd primary election. Just want to go over briefly some of the information from that.
Please.
The number of our polling locations, we had 287. And of the 3,758 election officials that we needed, we had 3,343 that worked. And we are happy to say that 20% of those are new workers. So we're working on our attrition and recruiting some new election officials. Also, with the future appointments, and we consistently work on this with our promotions, relocations, removals, on watch, and demotions. The relocation number was fairly high in May, and so we did work on moving some of those workers around, and that's usually attributed to some of the personalities and the interactions and so forth. So we do work on moving people around, and we found that in August, we had a lower number of people that we will need to relocate because of that. The training statistics, so we only had to train people that were not previously trained for the year in August. So we ended up training 147 people online, 911 in person. We had our practice makes perfect, which is an additional training for our managers, our board of location managers, and board of location deputies have a specific 2-hour training that we have. And we focus this time on doing actual scenarios and modules of what happens on election day and set the room up as election day. They were the voters and walk through, because we know previously we had some problems with closing and our ballot accounting, which has improved. To look at some of the information on the report. We had 716 people attend our virtual sessions in Zoom, which previously we had to add an additional 8 sessions. We doubled the number of opportunities because we noticed previously there were 100 or more people attending the session each time. This time we had approximately 40 to 50 people max on each of the sessions. So in total, we trained 2,004 people in the various models that we use. Then the average age of workers. And so again, looking back to the number of our new workers, our average age for August is 62, between 62 and 63 for our PEOs, our BLMs, and our BLDs, our managers for our locations. In regards to the criteria set forth by our Secretary of State, the opening and closing of the polls, all 287 locations open and closed on time, which we're very happy to report. Now, printing, signing, and packing the zero reports. Our numbers are at 69% for 199 of our locations, 56 locations signed some of the reports, and 32 did not sign any tapes, and we are working on some new plans and procedures. And I know that's one thing that the board has asked about previously in regards to that. So we do have some measures in place that we're considering and looking at different ways we pack the reports, but it does involve other departments. So we're going to move that to 2023, have enough time to do that and actually pack them with some of the other reports that are placed in like a blue envelope and so forth. So we are working on that, because I know that's a number. Actually, 69 is better than where we were, but it's not where we need to be.
Just a quick question if I can interrupt. So is there, I know a lot of times we do color coding, or we have, in the boxes, we will have, sheets that will flag folks' attention to stop and pause. Are we going to do any of that to make, maybe there needs to be a different color coding or something to get folks' attention as a reminder?
We have a post-election backup sheet that we've actually, in the practice make perfect, went over with the manager to help with that. We are also looking at our blue electronic poll books envelope to actually put, you said colors, so we're going to colors, looking at a blue envelope and then put the reports in. So then they're actually there for us immediately after election. So when we do our performance review, we can have those immediately, and it gives them somewhere to deposit them rather than put them centrally into the gray ballot box with all the other unused ballots and other information.
But Marley, my question is sort of like before, unless I'm not understanding the process correctly, before I know we need the blue envelope to know where the tapes and where everything is, but to flag to their attention as a reminder to do the task. Is there something else we can do, or?
We'll do an additional reminder for practice makes perfect, for another piece in there. And then as we transition into 2023, looking at a whole new plan, which we have to train them on. At this point, because people were trained early in the year and won't come back to training, we don't want to confuse them.
Right.
That's the other piece.
So this won't be done till next year, after that, November. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And then in regards to stuff.
Excuse me, Ms. Staley,
Yes.
just to pick up on
Okay,
what
sure.
Ms. Chappelle was talking about, I appreciate you pointing that out, like the transparency that's involved here, and we need to improve in this area. Do we call and say, hey, Jeff Hastings, you were responsible for this location at Hilton Elementary. What happened? And then you talk to me and say, and ask me to explain why I missed this? I mean, do we do that?
Yes, we do. Actually, out of the total performance, we also look at the total scores. So with our performance review, we have a score between 1 and 3. And so just using a sports analogy, we want a golf score. We want the low score.
Right.
We don't want a 3, but we want the high scores.
Right.
And so
Do we want par? We want to.
Exactly. So those, even on some of the locations had 1.56, there were 2 locations identified in August that had over 1.5. Looking at those, contact those individually. We looked to see if there's any patterns, and there hasn't been in the elections, consistent patterns of one particular location. And so previously, the 2 locations we identified, one had 2 precincts, one was a consolidated location, had more than 6 precincts. So it wasn't something where you can say just one particular location, but we do make contact with them afterwards and to talk to the manager.
If you have, I mean, are you hearing, oh, I just forgot, or it's their fault? And I mean, you're hearing some,
No, in
responses to that?
August, we had one special circumstance or situation that happened at the end of the night in regards to the DS200s and in printing the reports. And so some of that could be attributed to that. In addition, during the PNP, we had them stop and pause. 2 p.m., you delivered your closing information. Go over your closing information immediately. Go over with the people that are there, what their assignments are. Look and see if that first report that's printed in the morning, was it signed? If it was signed, you're in the right task. If it wasn't signed, this is your opportunity to train and re-educate right now. And so we did that during PNP. We noticed more reports came back than not. But in addition to some of the things that are going on with the DS at the end of the night, a portion of that played a part, and then just having reports in a central location. We're hoping instead of putting them in the gray bag with the ballots and things like that, if we have them in a dedicated colored folder, like was mentioned, then that would help with them in it. But we do have conversations after with the managers to say what was going on. Maybe it was a new manager, so that's the education, that's the people that we have like on watch that have to go back to in-person training prior to the next election. So we use some of those things with it.
Thank you, Chairman. I think some of it too is what we hear oftentimes is, really? No, I thought we did that. We did. And that's what and that's kind of like some more common response that we get when we do reach out after the fact, is that safe? No, I thought we sure.
Is there a checklist that they use to make sure all of these are, so is that on the checklist?
It's a post-election checklist that tells
Yeah.
them where to deposit the things in the gray bag, red bag, blue bag, green bag. All of those are there. Some could be attributed to fatigue after
Yeah,
a long
it's a
day,
big job.
but yeah, we definitely do follow up with them just to see if there, some things that we can improve on, that maybe some tools, additional tools we can provide for.
And I think one thing, I don't know if you picked up on this, what we do is, because there's a lot going on at Monday night, the beginning of the day, we do a Tuesday afternoon, have rovers bring things out, reminders, so maybe we can try to package some of that a little bit differently. So this way they've gotten through the rush of opening up and all those things now. And really they should be focusing, of course, executing the election, but starting to shift their focus on pack up, end of day type things. So I think we can maybe repackage that, highlight things, whatever it is, to bring it to their attention.
well, any other questions for Ms. Statler? Okay, thank you for that excellent report. I appreciate all the work you and your staff do, and most importantly, our recent election officials who are the face of our election. So
Yeah.
keep up the good work. I will move to acknowledge that PO performance report from August 2nd, 2022 primary election. If there's a second.
Second.
Any other question or comment? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Ms. Statler. Let's move on to fiscal recommendation of voting equipment, ancillary items, and funding requests. Mr. Filati, how do you want to tee that up? Ms. Walker?
Yeah, we're gonna, I will tee it up as Sean Keaton makes her way up. So we, on August 22nd, when we did our presentation on voting equipment, we talked a lot about what we wanted to do and what we needed as far as the core equipment to execute the election. We had made mention that there are some things that don't qualify for the state funding. And those are things that we do want to pursue and want to have county council both fund and give us the go ahead to do that. And these things are, some of the things are directly related to the new equipment that we would like tables to set up scanners on, because we have more scanners than we did before, ballot on demand in the voting room, which we don't have things for that, ballot joggers, which kind of get the ballots all prepped up to scan. So you have those things. Then we have a new cybersecurity and physical security directive that came out. And there are some requirements in that directive where some additional equipment would help us meet the requirements of that, as well as just overall increase the security and the integrity of the election. And then we were really good at repurposing and recycling and using things here. Meaning that we have things that are over a decade old, things that were purchased when we did touchscreen voting back in the early to mid 2000s. And some of these things have just been worn out. They've done well, but it's time for a refresh. And so that's kind of where we are. And staff working together, I would say primarily Tony, or Director Gallagher and Peter James, leading up discussions with the various departments to kind of figure out what are some of these key things that we need. They identified a lot of that. And then now Sean Cuyahoga, our new fiscal manager, comes into the mix with tremendous amount of county procurement experience. And she's right in there with both Tony and Peter, now getting to where we are with what we have in today's board packet.
Good morning,
Good
Dr.
morning.
Walker, the fiscal manager here for board elections. Director, that I summed it up, any questions you have, I'm here to answer.
I just have a question about the chart, the table that identifies the 1.1, a little more than 1.146230, the items that we are going to need to fund. Is this the complete list, or is there anything else? I know there's been a lot of thought going into what election support, early in-person voting and ballot needs. Anything else, or is this, because I would hate for us to have to go back, and I think there was a September 20, I see a September 28th deadline for county council. So are we sure this is it, or?
I would say that this is pretty darn close to it. The one thing that's not on here, and because it's not appropriate to put it on this point in time, is additional labor that we would need, such as temporary staffing to unpack the new equipment, and some of the training, because that will happen in 2023. And so the way the system is they don't want to allocate $2022 for that. So we will, and actually kind of the way the system will work is we will go ahead, do what we need to do, and we'll be borrowing 2023 November funds to cover some of that, and then we'll get an additional appropriation towards the middle of the end of the year to cover that.
But they'll be given a heads up about.
They definitely will.
So we've had a meeting last week with our Office of Budget Management Specialist downtown, and informed them of our upcoming request. They gave us the timeline of what we need to submit the paperwork to them. We also informed them of the upcoming request for 2023 as those requirements will be necessary when the new equipment is in place. So they are aware. Our budget analyst has spoken with the director of budget and also has informed county council of the upcoming request.
Thank you. Any other, and just to follow up on Ms. Davis's comments, this is something you circulated around all the managers, said, what do we need? What do you think we need as far as
Yes.
equipment goes? Trying to get, okay.
Yes, so they have, like I said, Tony and Peter just really vetted through and got to what are these key things that we need. And this is what they came up with. And to come up with these numbers, basically kind of looked to a couple things through different on the internet and vendors to get a ballpark of what realistically, what does some of the stuff cost. Now, once we have the appropriation, we will go through the official procurement process, soliciting through quotes and all those types of things. But in order to put together like a realistic number, you got to look. So we're true. And I think not only did we circulate with all departments, we try to get numbers that are real, that, hey, if we got this, we actually could purchase what we need to purchase.
One other, I'm assuming other counties are doing this, the same thing, because not everything's covered by the secretaries, by the money that we are being granted to purchase. So, I mean, this isn't anything unusual. Other large counties are, have you checked? To
Yeah,
see?
when we were looking at what voting equipment to purchase, these were part of our discussions with them. We asked them at this point of the process, what were you doing, what were you looking at? And a lot of them did say this was the opportunity that we took to upgrade and to purchase these types of ancillary items at this time. Because and as you look at the list, there's nothing extravagant here. These are all meat and potatoes, things that are needed and items that have been purchased 10, 15 years ago. So they've definitely we've had a good life cycle through them.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Walker, thank you. Hearing none, I will move to recommend the purchase of voting, budgeting monies for the purchase of voting equipment, ancillary items and funding requests as set forth in the agenda. If there's a second.
Second.
Any other question or comment? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, just to try to get done as much business as we can, we have a confidential SOS Directive 2022-38 update. Does that need to go in executive session for that, or is that just something we can acknowledge? It deals with.
I think it deals with the Secretary of State directive. I can say generally that we are on track and on target with all of the marks that we need to be. We are working closely with county IT, Jeremy Neo and his team, as well as the Secretary of State's cyber team, and with Homeland Security and third-party vendors that the Secretary of State has identified for some of our things. So we are hitting our marks.
Let me just summarize. Thank you. I mean, it is a directive from the Secretary of State dealing with cybersecurity in general and how to prevent any attacks on our software and hardware. And therefore, under the public records law, is considered confidential. And that's why we don't have it here, because we don't want to show to people, bad actors, that what the Secretary of State is doing. So we have it down here as an agenda item. We could go into executive session to discuss it if we wish to, or we can simply acknowledge that directive. I guess I'm asking my board members if anybody would like to go into executive session to do that, or is it sufficient to simply acknowledge here in open session? Okay, hearing none.
I'm fine with
Fine,
it.
okay, then hearing none, then I will move to acknowledge the SOS Directive 2022-38 update from the Secretary of State. If there's a second.
Second.
And I just want to comment that we are all aware of that update, and Mr. Pilates indicated our staff is working diligently to make sure we're in compliance with it. So that suffices for me. Any other question or comment? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Yes, and then we'll wait for November update, okay? Mr. Pilates, that's what we have left. And then the other reason we're here is for certification of issues, but we can't certify those issues, I guess, until we get through a couple issues that have been brought to this board's attention. First, discussion, I will call it a discussion regarding Mr. Brandon King's recall affidavit. Just a summary, and there was an excellent summary put together by Mr. Lawler and his staff on this recall matter for Mr. King. And I just want to highlight some of the matters that you summarized. Let me just tell you to Mr. Mayor King, and I know there are others who want to speak about this, and we'll be giving you an opportunity to do so. But I think it's important to let you know what we know, okay? So you aren't repeating yourselves to us. I know the staff has diligently read all the staff, the board members have diligently read all the matters that you have provided to us. We've had counsel from our legal counsel. We've received some advice from him. And so we'll be asking questions, but what we call this is kind of there's no issues of fact here. Okay, I mean, I think there's really no question what I think about the law, but we're going to hear from you and maybe ask a few questions about it. But just to let you know that back on August 22nd, the board did certify the recall issue to November 8th ballot for Mayor King. Mayor King was present at that meeting, requested the board have that election, I think sometime in late October, a week before the election, which we declined not to, because it was clear in the charter that that election shall be scheduled on the general election day. Then subsequently on September 2nd, we received Mayor King submitted a challenge to the recall issue. And then also on that same day, we received an opinion from East Law Director Hemmons, who I see is here too, as it relates to the issue that Mayor King is bringing to this board. And that issue is he believes that the matter shouldn't be on the ballot because the petitions that were circulated and certified by the clerk of council at East Cleveland had more than 200 words on that. And that's probably a fact that's not in dispute too. It's the mayor's position that because East Cleveland's charter is silent on how many words can be on the petition, that the law requires that we defer, the courts defer to 70592, which limits 200 words. And therefore, because there are more than 200 words, this matter shouldn't be on the ballot. I think that fairly summarizes the mayor's position. I know you'll correct me when you have an opportunity to speak. Staff has pointed out that there are communities such as the village of Woodmere that specifically state in their charter, explicitly state that not more than 200 words can exist. That is not the case in East Cleveland. Staff has determined that since 2015, there have been 13 attempts to recall elected officials in East Cleveland. Of those 13 attempts, staff have found 7 of those affidavits for the petitions contain more than 200 words, and there was never any challenge prior to that.
The city of East Cleveland has a history of permitting affidavits in the excess of 200 words, including 3 of the 4 attempts in 2022 that exceeded the 200-word threshold. There is no specific language, as pointed out in their charter, that incorporates the terms set forth in 70592 into the recall chapter within the charter. In other words, there's nothing that says, hey, 70592 controls here because we have no limits in our charter ourselves. And the staff is not aware why the city clerk did not reject the affidavits prior to issuing the petitions to the circulators, providing a notice to the mayor or prior to inviting the board to place this issue on the ballot. And let me just tell you one final thing. It's the board's position that when those petitions came in after being certified by the clerk, that we simply went down that list to make sure that the individuals were actually registered to vote, which we determined they were in those petitions, and then we notified the clerk of council that was the case. So we played a ministerial role in that whole process. Having said that, I hope I did a fairly general summary here. We'll hear from those individuals that want to speak on the Mayor King matter, and we'll start, and I have a number of requests, and I'll put them in that order. Having said that, I know Councilperson Stevenson wants to address this, but I think it's a separate matter, so we're going to hear the mayor's, have a discussion on the mayor's matter, and then we'll deal with Ms. Stevenson, okay? Kind of laying the ground rules here. You have 5 minutes because these are to speak to this board if you so choose. There will be a timer, okay? Do you want to start off, Mayor King? Or excuse me, actually, the Law Director Hemmings, you were number 1 on our list, so let me start with you. I'm sorry, man. Up here, Law Director Hemmings, please.
Good morning. May it please the Board of Elections.
I'm sorry, can you spell your last name?
Oh, yes, may it please the Board of Elections. I am Willa Hemmons, Hemmons, Law Director, City of East Cleveland. And as a response to the board chair's comments, I would like to say that the protocol, the petition protocol says, thank you.
Skip, excuse me, Skip, would you talk to that gentleman? We're having a public meeting here, so.
Says that the law director is the subject matter expert in terms of whether or not a petition is valid. The other previous years, I was not aware. I was probably not law director at that point. And so therefore, we would ask that the board defer to the law director for the opinion as to whether or not ultimately an issue should be decertified. And that's what we're requesting. There are more than 200 words. Our city charter is silent on that. And I've included in my opinion several cases that says where the charter is silent, then the state law 705.92 controls. And I think that the past history, whether it be negligence or incompetence, that allowed those previous petitions to go forward should not be held as controlling in this situation. In addition, once that issue popped up, the mayor eyeballed the actual petitions. And again, not just 705.92 came into play, but also the charter, which I included in the September 2nd communication, section 49, indicates that the procedure to effect the removal of any elected officer of the city shall be initiated by the filing of the petition with the clerk of the council demanding that the question of removing such officer or officers be submitted to the electors. Such petition shall be signed by the electors of the municipality who voted in the last regular election of each municipal officer whose recall is sought. And that goes against the 15% that 705.92 allows and increases it to at least 25%. And eyeballing the actual petition, the petition actually, in my expert opinion, as the law director, we have found, and this is in blue, I think I tried to make enough copies for the board, but there are 43 signatories to the petition that did not vote in the last general election, November 2nd, 2021. Therefore, their signatures are not down, and the certification should be decertified as being unlawful, going against our charter, as the board has acknowledged in its website, as well as its other opinions. The municipal charter is what controls. Our charter says that signatures to a recall petition must have voted in the last recall, the last general election. 43 of those individuals did not vote in the last general election, which was November 2nd, 2021. I'm sure there have been situations in the past. I remember Euna Keenan brought to the attention of this board that she had a matter which was initially not found and wanted to decertify an opinion of this board. And likewise,
Excuse me, Ms. Evans,
Yeah.
let me just ask you this. Why isn't your action, your mandamus action, directed to the clerk of council of East Cleveland? That person was the one that okayed the petitions. That person was the one issued the petitions to the circulators, noticed the mayor, provided notice to the mayor, and then provided notice to us and asked us to just verify the signatures. Why are we even hearing this now? I mean, why shouldn't your action be directed to her if you think she did her job wrong and you want a court to order her to withdraw those petitions?
No, it's the board of it. She came down here to get what the decision from the board. She was.
Decision, what do you mean decision?
The certification of petitions in which he was notified
Right.
that 322 petition signatures were valid.
But she's the one that approved the language on the petition. She's the one that
Certifies it.
She certifies it.
She certifies it, the
Oh,
clerk.
yeah, all we do is make sure they're registered. That's it.
The thing is, the Board of Elections has more resources. There's no lawyer or.
It has nothing to do with resources, Ms. Hemmings. It's about the law. I'm just wondering, why are we here? Why are you asking us to do this? Why aren't you asking the clerk to do this?
She is not a lawyer. I could ask jointly, the Board of Elections, when you find out something is wrong that goes against the charter, the Board of Elections is incumbent upon the Board of Elections to rectify that. Here is a patent violation in which we found.
I'm sorry, I think the chair's asking you to address the jurisdictional issue before we get to the merits. Because it seems to me there's a procedural issue that needs to be discussed first to even determine whether we have jurisdiction. Because we rely on, so what happens in your shop? What happens over at East Cleveland? It's the clerk who is certifying, giving the certification. Presumably you are the subject matter expert on the charter. The two of you are getting together. Somebody's figuring the issue out procedurally, whether there's compliance with your charter. And then we get a certification from the clerk of council for East Cleveland. And we assume, and we are rightly, I think, justified in relying on all of the documentation, all of the research, all of the compliance with the law, all the compliance with the charter has been done. And all we are doing is when we get the certification is verifying that the signatures on the, verifying the signatures and whether they're sufficient. So could you address I think the chair's asking you to address the jurisdictional issue.
That's actually my question too, because like, could you not, as the law director, be the one giving her legal advice, not this board? I guess that's my question
Well,
too.
what you're pointing out to me is that any, not mandamus or any writ of prohibition that might need to go to the Ohio Supreme Court should first go to the clerk of council and have her corrected and then come back to you guys?
No, I would go to the clerk of council, and if she refuses to do what you request her, then you can go to court then and request the court to order her to do something.
Okay, now, would you give me some parameters in terms of, that's easy to be done, and once she decertifies it, what happens after that in terms of your?
Well, if she does what you ask her, okay, then there's some other parties that'll probably disagree with her conduct, and then they can go to court, ask the judge to do something.
I'm not asking to go to court. What I'm saying is, if she decertifies the petitions based on the fact that they are unlawful as to Mayor King, then she brings it, does she have an opportunity then to bring it to you for review?
Mr. Musson, if I'm I think it's a writ of mandamus. Is that what they would be filing against the clerk?
Right, since we're not acting in the quasi judicial capacity
Here.
currently, it would be a mandamus rather than prohibition or an injunction. possibly.
Well, well, this is already on the ballot, and so I think that.
It is.
Yeah, it's already on the ballot, so we're asking that it be decertified. It's in your auspices. The clerk of council was wrong, okay? And so now we're asking you to rectify that. You're saying that if she brings to you a decertification, you will not act on that, so that we don't have to. If she brings a decertification saying that in light of the new evidence, there were not enough signatures, what are you going to do?
Well, so Mr. Musson, in that case, I mean, in other words, like withdraw the issue from the ballot, right?
Yes.
Is that?
Right, I think we would, and Tony, correct me if I'm, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So if we were to get notice that to decertify that, then we would come before this board and say that the city of East Cleveland, it doesn't meet the terms of their charter, that they had erred on that, and then I think we would decertify. We would take that off the ballot.
And I don't know what we do actually, because it's never happened. It's never happened.
I guess my question is, like, typically the law director for the city would work with the clerk, provide the legal parameters and opinion. Then, the clerk, because the clerk is not an attorney, and she's got a statutory role. So it seems like the guidance should have come to her maybe perhaps before it came here. And when we did see the mayor at the last meeting and he didn't raise any of these issues when we voted to certify, I guess that's where I'm confused.
Well, see,
So
the thing is, this is a matter that did not come to our attention. She did not consult me. The public counsel did not consult with me when she took the petitions down. Now, we were just aware of this because of the other issue about the excessive wording. That's when the mayor eyeballed it and found out that 43 people were on the petition that as signatories that should not have been. So we will take your guidance.
Well, I would say
no, this is not
This is not guidance, Ms.
Yeah,
Simmons. Excuse me, this is not guidance. You're the law director. You
Right.
understand that, okay? I don't believe we even have jurisdiction to hear the matter, but as a courtesy, as we receive these as late as Sunday afternoon documents from you, and today's Monday, we agreed to at least hear what you have to say on this issue, okay? But it isn't guidance, so we don't want to see in a writing to court. Based on the Board of Elections, we're gonna.
No,
doing
we
this,
don't want to
okay?
go to court. We want it handled administratively as it should
Can
be.
I also note, there is a letter dated August 16th that you are copied on from the clerk outlining the fact that the petition was issued, the BOE approved the signature. So, I mean, this is something you were aware of at least August 16th.
But I was not aware that the signatures were unlawfully obtained, okay?
Yeah, but you were aware they were filed. I guess
Yeah,
I
but
just want to
not
be
that
clear
they
about
were
that.
unlawful.
You could have
Okay.
looked at it and then made the determination. So,
No, I assume that because you guys, I thought that you guys were doing your job and had followed the charter as certifying it, okay? But since now.
Yeah, the charter doesn't go, can you speak, so this is, we try to accommodate all of the municipalities, all of the cities, to make sure that we are, but we have to rely on you all. I mean, we have to rely on, so the steps that need to be followed in your shop, and I'm saying your shop, in East Cleveland or whatever township or village or where you have to rely on the clerk. We have to rely on what the clerk submits to us. And we are assuming, because this happens in most cities and most municipalities, that the law director and the clerk are rowing in the same direction and operating in tandem to make sure that charter requirements are met and the requirements of the law are met. So I just am of the view that this creates a problem for us jurisdictionally, not jurisdictionally, but we should not be hearing on the merits when we can't get past it. What if everybody came, what if we could not rely on any clerk of council or clerk? I mean, we just can't, we have to be able to rely on the fact that you guys have done your homework at the city with your clerk, with the law director, and that you're coming to us saying these are everything, all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. And then we have a ministerial function. I don't even think we can get to the merits of the arguments that you're presenting.
I understand, but that assumption that you made was a rebuttable one. And now we are going to, to correct it. And once we, like Director said, once we bring this to the attention of the council clerk, because it just came to our attention this weekend that, it was against the charter, then we will go from there. Thank you for hearing.
All right, thank you, Ms. Simmons. Mr. Lawler, would you like to say something? Mr. King, I don't think you filled out you have something briefly to say to us?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you, Mr. Lawler first, go ahead.
Frank Lawler, manager, candidate district services. I just want to clarify something. When a political subdivision brings petition to us to check a referendum initiative or recall petition, we specifically ask the city how this board and how the registration department should be checking signatures. Like the city of Cleveland requires that you have to have voted in the last municipal election, and then we do our normal diligence. We send it to IT, and then they comb through the records, and we go back and we recode everything. In September of 29th of last year, Victoria, Moore, I think was her name, was the clerk of council, and there was a recall for Ward 4. And that time she asked that specific question, and our response was we do not review the charters, and we copied the law director on that. The law director subsequently on 30th of September, not even a year ago, stated Ward 4 specific recall elections are limited to electors who live in the ward serviced by the designated council member, as long as the signatures are from registered voters who live in the subject ward. The petition signers do not have to be voted in the last regular municipal election of officers. So going forward from September of last year to our 5 recall petitions, even though they didn't get to the ballot, we've used this legal opinion from the law director.
Is this from Ms. Hemmons?
This is September of last year.
From Ms. Hemmons, the law director?
Yes.
Oh,
Which was what I just said.
yes.
Yes. I just want to clarify that for the issue for the.
Appreciate that, Mr. Lawler.
That's the policy that we follow.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
In rebuttal, we are going to follow, the charter, and we're going to this city council clerk. Okay, this is an email, it's not an opinion. It was done in terms of just as a quick response, but in reviewing the charter, we will go to the city council clerk and ask for decertification, and then she will come back to you for further action. Thank you. And that action we're asking is the withdrawal.
Go ahead, Mayor King.
Okay, so thank you. Hello, board. Last in front of you, last month. It's good to see you again. Didn't know the procedure at our last meeting, so I didn't get a chance to thank you for allowing me to speak. So I wanted to thank you now. I remember at the last meeting, on the agenda, you had the rule of law that was on the agenda. You stated it before I spoke, and then you stated it before you voted. So I really appreciate that you go by the rule of law, policies and procedures, that you follow that to the T. What I'm asking here today is, we had a busy summer, busy in East Cleveland. I'm sure you guys have been busy getting over COVID. Willa was actually on vacation when I came down here. And I came down here just to ask for a special election. I'm not a lawyer. I hadn't looked at it. I hadn't looked at the charter. I do know at my time as an elected official, there have been numerous times when we've had to defer to the Ohio Revised Code because the city charter is so outdated, needs to be updated, hasn't been updated, that we have to then go to the Ohio Revised Code when our charter doesn't speak to something. What I'm asking is that we still follow the law, policies and procedures. 49 of the East Cleveland Charter says that the electors who voted in the last general election are the only signatures that should count. And I'm not sure if the clerk of council knew that, read that before she sent it to you. Right? I'm not sure whose job that is to look at that. What I did, spent all Friday and Saturday doing it, all Saturday doing it, got it to Willa Sunday. In yellow here is the November 2nd, 2021 election. You'll see where it has a Y, that means someone voted.
I took one of the circulators, I took all of his and simply went through them. And I found 49 signatures that were approved by the Board of Elections as good signatures, but people who actually hadn't voted in that last election. So those signatures therefore should not count. I actually found 2 signatures approved by the Board of Elections that they must have been new registrants because their names and addresses weren't even on the Board of Elections website as registered voters. Which leads me to believe that you approved 2 signatures of people who then just registered to vote. So you register somebody to vote and have them sign a recall petition. I'm asking that we continue to follow the rule of law, and that when this comes back to you, it is taken off. It is taken off the ballot for November. Again, Ohio Revised Code, 200 words. They had almost 300 words. Preposterous that you would need that many words to do what you sought out to do. If there was really something that needed to be done, you could have said it in 5 words, change the direction, right? Mayor did something illegal, you put it on there, boom, gone, right? You got 500 words or 300 words. I thank you for your time today. And if you have, and when we come back in front of you, I'm gonna ask that you kindly follow the law as you do and withdraw this thing from the November elections. Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Okay, we have some other.
Just,
go ahead.
just a point of just, I think we always follow the law. I think, you have other remedies. I mean, that's great if you're gonna go back and do the internal stuff you should have maybe done before and then you come back.
Yes.
That's fine, but you also have other remedies too. I mean, you can file, I think our chair pointed out, a writ of mandamus or take what other action you think is necessary to compel the results, or you have a court compel the result you think is appropriate. I don't think we have jurisdiction here, so.
I would agree with you, Michelle.
Thank you, though.
But we will hear from others.
Okay, we would hope that administratively, we would not have to resort to the courts for the Board of Elections to follow our charter as it espouses to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fambraw has asked to speak on this matter. Could you please state your name and address, sir?
Yes, my name is William Fambraw. I'm an East Cleveland resident. My address is 15832 Glen Road, East Cleveland, Ohio, 44112. Good morning.
Good morning.
To the board, board president, board vice president, to the director, to the members. First, the petitions were delivered to the Board of Elections. Then they were validated. Then the board certified the signatures. And at the prior meeting, just before this one, the Board of Elections set the mayor's recall elections for November 8th, 2022. Also, at that prior meeting, the Board of Elections heard Mayor King's protest. He wanted his recall election to be a special election held in October. But the real reason he wanted this is because he anticipates less voter turnout in October than in November, and a smaller turnout will increase his chances to survive the recall election. But the board wisely chose to place this recall election on the November 8th ballot instead. Now, he's back with a second protest, and Mayor King wants the board to ignore the fact that over 500 East Cleveland voters, more than 25% of those who voted in the last election, did sign the petition for his removal. Also, a recent election board meeting, the board established that August 28th, 2022 was the deadline to bring a protest, and that any protest filed after August 28th, 2022 would be filed too late. I understand that Mayor King filed this newest protest on September 2nd, 2022. That's 5 days after the deadline that was set by this board. Anyone who is aware knows that under the leadership of Mayor King, East Cleveland is suffering like never before. There are news stories about police and corruption all over the local news. The mayor has allowed this condition to run rampant, and now it's just completely out of control. The will of over 500 East Cleveland residents who signed the recall petition begs to be heard. The mayor needs to face his constituents. East Cleveland's voters deserve the chance to cast their votes in Mayor King's recall election on November 8th, 2022. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your time, Mr. Cranbrook. Appreciate it. Ms. Bloshwiak. Please state your name and address, ma'am.
I am Dr. Patricia Cuyahoga. I'm a counselor at large in the city of East Cleveland. My address is 1894 Farmington Road in East Cleveland. And I'd like to first start by agreeing with everything that Mr. Fambro just said. I'd also like to remind you, I may or may not have told you this before, but it bears repeating, that according to the charter of the city of East Cleveland, our law director must be approved by council. Ms. Hemmons has not been approved by council. She's been serving in that capacity since 2017, and she is therefore not our law director. And anything that she says should not be taken any more or less seriously than what the rest of us say. I'd like to call to your attention that she is selectively complaining about the affidavits being too large. You have one before you today that is also well over 200 words. And if she is going to complain about the petition, the affidavit for the petition for Mayor King, she should also complain about the affidavit for the recall of Councilor Colleen Stevenson, whose petition is also too large. Now, I could go over and repeat everything that Mr. Fambro said about this being too late and you've already done the right thing and stick with it and all those good things. But I will save you hearing that same thing and remind you that I agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bolchak, for your time. The other matters to be heard deal with Ms. Stevenson. My position, thank you. I want to, everybody for coming down here. I want to thank the mayor, Ms. Hemmons, Mr. Lawler, staff, but I don't believe that this is a matter that we have jurisdiction over. So I'm not going to take any motion or take any action. I will ask that part of the record, in addition to what we have that's been submitted by the city of East Cleveland staff, that Mr. Lawler's email that he referred to in his addressing this board be part of the record too, just so all the parties have it. Is there any other documents that should be part of the record? I'm asking the board members if there isn't anything else. All right, that's my position on this. So I will be making no motion. I will thank the parties for addressing the matter, and I'm ready to move on to the next item unless my other board members back on. Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to move on to the next matter then. We have a certification, the East Cleveland Member of Council Ward 4 recall election issue, establishing said recall election for the November 8th election. There are a number of individuals want to be heard on that, and we'll start with Corinne Stevenson. Ms. Stevenson, if you give your name and address, please.
Good morning. My name is Corinne Stevenson. I reside at 15006 Grandview Terrace Road in East Cleveland, Ohio, 44112. I'm here this morning with regard to the recall petition filed against me that is erroneous at best. There are three issues here that I would like to address. The first issue is the legitimacy of an affidavit that was prepared by the city's law department by the assistant prosecutor to Willa Hemmons, who has, like my colleague stated, never been certified by the board. That affidavit is notarized by Heather McCullough, who is an employee of the city, and therefore creates a conflict. How can a city employee prepare and notarize an affidavit to recall her boss, and that's against state law? You all received last week a filing that I sent to you all. That information is in the filing. It addresses Heather McCullough's inconsistencies in preparing the affidavit. The second issue that I have to discuss here is the legitimacy of the signatures that were secured by federal felons and state felons. There are 95 signatures in this document that were secured by state or federal felons. It is against the law in the state of Ohio for a felon to secure petition signatures for anything. They can vote, but you cannot secure a signature. Those 95 signatures should be removed from this petition because they are illegal in the state of Ohio. Third, you receive the numerous affidavits and recall petitions that were submitted from these folks who are David Ratcliffe Sr., who lives at 1860 Hastings Road, and Darrell G. Moore, who lives at 33800 Harrow Court in Solon, Ohio. I ran on transparency, honesty, and integrity. Unfortunately, that's not a popular thing in East Cleveland. I refuse to move forward when things don't have policy and procedure and meet a certain protocol. I am a trained person. I am educated in what is right and wrong, and I'm a former police officer. I have no intentions of going to jail for anyone. So therefore, I do what I know is best for the city and the residents in that city. I go back to the fact that Mr. Ratcliffe and Mr. Moore are felons, and I am requesting that those 95 signatures be removed as a result, and that the affidavit in its entirety be thrown out because it was prepared by staff of a law department in the city of East Cleveland, who does not technically have a law director. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stevenson. And Mr. Musson, before we go to the next, what is the law on convicted felons and their right to vote and circulate petitions? If you could just summarize that.
Yes, in Ohio, felons are disqualified or incompetent to circulate petitions until they've served their prison time and any post-release control. Once their post-release control has expired, they are restored and have the ability to circulate petitions. However, if they are a federal felon, that restoration of rights does not seem to apply, and the disqualification from circulating as a federal felon continues.
So in other words, an individual convicted under a felony in state law is permitted to vote and circulate petitions as long as they're not in prison and they're not on post-release control or supervision.
Correct.
So there's no automatic, I thought for registering that they needed to register to vote. Is that, I mean, I know we have two different issues, circulation of petitions and then registration. I thought that they had to take an affirmative step after post-release and control, and after they've served their time, they had to re-register. I thought that was the registration requirement. Is that correct, or is there no automatic qualification?
The rights are automatically restored, but to vote, you have to register and take that affirmative step.
But to circulate,
I do not believe you need to be a registered voter to circulate.
don't you have to be a qualified elector then? I mean, I'm a little.
There's an issue with out-of-state circulators. They've allowed out-of-state folks to.
That's true. You can be an out-of-state circulator, and not, but I should know.
I do know in some cities, some charters require someone to be a member of that city to circulate. And I know that we've said that isn't something we have to follow because state law allows. Like, I think Westlake had that provision, but they didn't necessarily have to follow that.
Okay, yeah.
So we should be clear, we should at least, so there's automatic qualification to circulate once you've satisfied all of the correctional requirements, once you've been released, once you've satisfied any post-release requirement of the court.
I
There's
believe,
automatic qualification to circulate.
yes. Usually the parole authority or the Department of Corrections will issue a certificate that you finished but that certificate's not a mandatory thing that you need to present to if they screw up and they don't issue the certificate, you're still restored under the law.
Okay. And for voting, you have you automatically have the right to vote. You're qualified, but you have to obviously take an affirmative step to register. Right. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Stevenson, I was just, you made allegations that these people are convicted felons. I see no proof of that. I don't doubt that they may be. Do you have any proof that they are? Excuse me, Ms. Stevens, let me ask my question. So you have any proof that they're in prison? while they circulated? Do you have any proof that they were on post-release control while they circulated? Assuming your assertion that they're felons is correct, you follow me? Do you have proof that they were either in prison when they circulated or that they were on
The
post-release control?
federal law does not require that you be in prison. The federal law requires that you cannot circulate, period.
Right, do you have proof that they were federally convicted?
Yes,
Okay, where is that proof?
I sent that proof to you in this document last week. It was supposed to be delivered to you.
What document? I haven't seen
This
it.
document.
When did you submit it?
Friday.
Wait, Friday? At what time?
1:30.
1:30 Friday, and today's Monday.
Yes.
Right, okay. Right. I wasn't given these documents.
I think all we have is just the affidavit.
Your 23-page
Yeah,
affidavit.
that's all we have that I've seen.
Right, we did receive an additional couple hundred sheets.
Oh, there were, you did email us, that there were 300 pages.
Oh, that's okay.
Yes, so we provided just the
Just
affidavit at this point.
Okay.
And I do have the remainder of the basket of documents.
Okay, well, let's see the documents then. I mean, I don't, where are they at? I don't. While we're waiting here, I just want to get through one matter. I'm going to have to leave here about 5 to 11 to take a Zoom call for a federal case. And if we're still going on, I'll ask Ms. Sticken to take over the chair for me if we're still doing. But I think we can do one thing. I know we received a type vote letter from Mr. LaRose about Representative Davis's certification. At our last meeting, I believe we certified her with the understanding of the protest. I think, Mr. Law, if I'm correct, we need to decertify her now. Is that correct? As a ministerial act? Okay. Having said that, I will move based on the tie vote letter from Secretary Lowe's, and ask my colleagues I'm going to move to decertify Ms. Davis from the ballot for November as an independent candidate.
Just a point of order question. Do we need to take that action? We've actually, it seems to me, we would simply acknowledge the fact that the tie vote, I mean, I'm just not sure why we would need to vote on it. He's the chief elections officer. He's basically said she should be decertified. Why would we need to vote on it as opposed to simply acknowledging that he broke the tie and she, I mean, what is the motion again? I'm sorry.
So we certified her to the ballot.
Yes.
And I remember specifically asking, if we certify her, does that mean the protest is that we determine the protest? We don't have to hear the protest because she's been certified. And I'm certain we were told, no, you can certify her if you uphold the protest, then she's decertified.
She was already certified, is my understanding. She was already, we certified her at a prior.
Based on the petition.
Right, based on the petitions, and then we heard the protest.
Granted the protest. I mean, the protest was granted, okay?
Right.
I mean,
What's the process? It just seems to me, our chief elections officer has made a determination. There's no need for us to vote on it, but you're saying to vote on, he's basically saying she should be decertified.
Do we have to acknowledge it?
Maybe we just acknowledge it as opposed to voting to decertify. I mean, he's basically ruled.
Mr. Musson
I
and
don't know what
Mr.
we do.
Lawler, what would you prefer to do?
I don't have a good advice or well-reasoned advice for you.
I mean, does it hurt to say we acknowledge it and in light of that, recognize she's decertified? Maybe that's what we.
Let me, I got an email from Ms. Fajani saying,
Okay.
hey, we want to put the walk-on agenda item for the decertification of Shayla Davis as an independent candidate for the 18th House District. And here's a letter from Mr. LaRose. So I don't know, Mary, I mean, I'm wondering why are we doing it? I mean, I don't mind doing it if that's what staff wants.
Seems to me that, it seems to me our chief elections officer has said she should be decertified, that,
He broke the tie.
he broke the tie and has made the decision.
I mean, I guess acknowledging if we have withdrawals of the candidates that have been certified, we don't go back and decertify them, we acknowledge the withdrawal. So I would assume that you want to go along that same history that we do, acknowledging it. And we've already taken her, marked her as removed by board action on our website, because that's the only coding we can do. She's not going to appear on the ballot. The ballot already has that, so I think just acknowledging it for the record, it's in her file.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
And I think that's supported by 350111X, where it says the tie vote, the Secretary of State's decision who summarily decide the question, and the Secretary of State's decision shall be final. So I think just recognizing the the decision.
The letter
is
for
appropriate.
the record?
Yeah.
All right, I'll move to acknowledge Secretary LaRosa's tied vote letter dated September 9th, 2022, regarding upholding the protest of Sharila Taylor against Representative Davis. There's a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any question or comment? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay. There are documents in here that I'm just pouring through them. It's Mr. Moore that apparently has been indicted as in a federal case. And I'm just looking through it. If there's information from Mr. Radcliffe about a state conviction. So assuming he wasn't in jail or on probation or supervised release, any petitions he circulated would be valid.
Correct.
But Mr. Moore circulated apparently petitions too. Is that the case?
Yes. And do those signatures take us below the number, I guess? That's the question, too.
So of the 95, do we know how many were circulated by Radcliffe and how many were circulated by?
Right.
29 were
Ms.
circulated.
Stevenson, well, we're going to hear from staff, okay?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Here's the state.
Daryl Moore or someone? That's what I'm wondering. What's the state population there? Well, we don't necessarily even have to do.
So it's state, it's Daryl Moore's 50 signatures
That's what it
that,
looks like to me, yeah. And he had the most signatures gathered, Daryl Moore. Did we confirm his?
Yeah. I haven't examined the docket or anything.
Okay. So I just think it's
Right,
pretty straightforward if it's the case, you know.
Well, let me just, I'm very familiar with the federal court docket because I do a lot of criminal defense.
you know that you were over there a lot.
So I'm looking that they provide, though it's not certified, I'm familiar with this document to know that it was taken off of the ECM system over there, and there is an
Is that their
indication.
document system?
Yes, it is. And thank you. And that defendant Daryl G. Moore, I'm assuming it's the same person, there was a Daryl G. Moore that was convicted in federal court. Let's see here. He was committed to the Bureau of Prisons for 53 months. It counts 1, 2, 6, 7, and 8. 3 years supervised released in order to pay restitution and $1.4 million.
What was the rest of it?
$1.4 million as to count 2 and $1.3 million. That's an approximation as to count 6. Convicted of conspiracy, money laundering, and securities fraud.
And the law is a federal conviction prohibits circulation of a petition. Is that the law?
I'm sorry, can you repeat
A
that?
federal conviction prohibits that person from circulating a petition.
Correct. Under Ohio law, both a federal or state conviction disqualifies you from circulating, but then Ohio law restores that right for state felons, not
So
federal.
we don't have any, we don't know about Mr. Radcliffe's.
I'm just assuming that.
The 50
well,
signatures takes it, even if we don't even need Radcliffe's
Right.
information, because if the information about Daryl Moore is correct, and he had 50 signatures that were counted toward the 142 that were required, of the 156 that were valid, then it seems to me that there aren't enough valid signatures.
would agree with that analysis.
This occurred, just for the record, back in April, May of 2008. And though it's over 14 years old, that doesn't cure his disability, correct? That's what it is.
So there's never a cure period once you are.
The way, and I don't know if that was the intent of the law, but the way that the law is written, it refers to, let me pull up the language, I'm sorry.
Well, let me, while he's looking at that, I know, for example, Mr. Johnson, Jeffrey Johnson was convicted of a felony and was released, but he went to state court because they don't do expungements in federal court. He went to state court, got it expunged, which removed his disability and allowed him to run for office and hold public office. So I think that's probably a similar path for others that want to restore their rights in regards to running for office, holding office, or circulating petitions. And I don't know that there's any proof that he's done that. Mr. Moore's done that. And there's no one here. Mr. Moore is not here. Is that correct? Yes.
Reviewing the documents, I think Radcliffe was the state court.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just as a point of reference, we had this same kind of issue last November for Richmond Heights, where the legal opinion, and that gentleman was also from federal court, and the board ruled that candidate off the ballot. He made that distinction in that legal opinion.
I kind of remember we had sort of the same discussion about how he could
He was
restore his rights,
yeah,
and he
right.
said he was going to go, he would, take, I do remember that.
Oh.
Because he circulated for himself.
Right.
That was
That's
the
right, I
issue.
remember that.
So it wasn't even a candidacy issue, it was a
Circulating
circulating
issue.
issue.
Thanks for reminding us of that.
Miss Sticken, I'm just, well, go ahead. Your father was part of the prosecution. So just to let you know.
Okay, I didn't know that. Very exciting.
I mean, just.
All right, I'll recuse myself.
Well, you wouldn't have known, but.
I didn't know that, so.
I mean, it seems pretty straightforward to me. I mean, unfortunately, we don't have any information to suggest otherwise, or that there's been any cure. It just seems to me, based on what we are hearing today, the documents we received, that Mr. Moore, circulated 50, got 50 valid, we thought were valid signatures. And maybe the signatures were valid, but he's not permitted to even circulate the petition. So to the extent that there were total 156 valid signatures, if we deduct the 50, there's only 106 valid signatures, which takes us below the minimum required. So
Is that a motion?
yeah, that's a motion to correct our certification of those, the recall petition into, let's see, where are we though? Wait,
Yeah,
before I
so-
make the motion, where are we?
We're here to certify the recall petitions for 4. Ms. Stevenson's here to object to that certification. She's provided us with some information that she thinks supports the request. So we're making
So
a
I am
decision whether
moving
to
that
certify.
to, that we reject the certification based on the fact that the new and additional evidence suggests there are not the minimally required signatures.
And I will second that and just add that I want to make part of the record, of course, the voluminous documents Ms. Stevenson has submitted to the board at Friday afternoon on the 10th of September. And that part of those documents, specifically Exhibit E, indicates that Mr. Moore, who circulated petitions for her recall, was in fact convicted of a federal crime in case number 107 CR 319 and sentenced to 53 months imprisonment under federal law, and that there's no indication that he's had that disability removed, and therefore under state law, the petitions he circulated are invalid. And those are, we also have this document from staff showing that there were 50 signatures valid signatures collected. Because those signatures would be invalid as a result of his conviction, there is not a minimum number of valid signatures required, and therefore based on that, I will support Ms. Davis Chappelle's motion. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, I know there are others out there to speak. I imagine you're all speaking on behalf of Ms. Stevenson. Is there anyone who wants to speak contra? Because of, okay, then I don't think there's a need to be heard then on this in light of Ms. Davis Chappelle's motion, my second of it. Are there any other questions or from staff? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of decertifying or not certifying the recall petitions for Ms. Stevenson signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. And I'll note for the record that Ms. Sticken is going to abstain. You want to state that for the
It
record?
just apparently it's been brought to my attention that my relative was part of the prosecution team at federal court. So for appearance of propriety, I will abstain, though I do agree with the legal analysis. So thank you.
Thank you. The record will so reflect. All right, then. Thank you, Ms. Davis. All right. Getting through that, and I am now, I believe, Mr. Lawler, we have the certification of the issues for the November 8th, 2022 general election.
Yes, so we make one correction. We
Please.
remove the Cleveland word for recall from that certification.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so do we need to,
Just make the reference as your,
For part of the minutes.
it's not hard, it's fine.
All right, I'll move to certify the issues.
List generic,
Okay.
that word.
All right, I'll move to certify the issues for the November 8th, 2022 general election as set forth in our agenda, with the exception of the recall election in Ward 4, East Cleveland, that not be on that certification list based on our previous action. There's a second.
second?
Any question or comment? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, then. Is there an update, Mr. Pilati?
Yes. So,
And excuse me, I may have to take off if we're not done at 5 too, just to let you know.
I'll make this quick, just real quick on November 8th and on September 13th. Regarding November 8th, poll worker recruitment, so far we have placed and trained about 2,600 poll workers, which is about 70% of what we need, which is good at this point. Friday was 60 days out, so we're in a good position at this point in time regarding that. Training did start last Friday and went through this weekend for in-person training. We actually had a training session here on Saturday, and we're off in a good way there. We do have about 800 messages out to poll workers who have worked previously, who have not confirmed yet. So we'll be working that as well as new applications that come in to be a poll worker. As far as polling locations, we have locked in all of our polling locations for the November election. Between August 2nd and November, we will have 9 locations that will change. Those 9 locations, or those voters impacted, will receive a letter from us indicating to them that they have moved and why they have moved, as well as on their voter information guide that we'll be sending out. There'll be a notation on that guide also that they have a different polling location. Vote by mail applications. The Secretary of State, they send out the statewide applications, which typically happens in even years for general elections. Prior to that mailing going out, we had around 15,000 applications. And since that mailing, that number has increased to about 85,000 vote by mail applications on hand. It's gone up very fast in a week's time, which is a good thing. Of those 85,000, about 15,000 of them we have processed, and we will have staff continue processing those. However, right now in the ballot department, our primary focus is we have built the ballot, we are proofing the ballot. We have staff in this weekend proofing, they'll be proofing this week and probably next weekend. So we will continue to process applications, but Cuyahoga is September 23rd, so our priority is making sure that ballot department has that squared away. But we will split our resources to keep everything moving along. Those are main things as far as November 8th is concerned. Everything else, all the planning is underway and moving forward as it should. Tomorrow, September 13th, is a recall election in the city of Berea. Today at 2 o'clock, early in-person voting closes. We were open this weekend and received 0 voters over the weekend for that. We have received 44 vote by mail applications, of which we've only had 8 ballots back. So we'll see what comes in today's mail as well as tomorrow. As far as voting equipment, our staff here tomorrow morning will deliver out scanners, electronic poll books. We'll set that up with the poll workers at the poll place between 5 a.m. and 5:30. So we're all ready when the polls open at 6:30. And it would be a regular day for us. Staff will bring back the equipment and the ballots and the memory sticks tomorrow when polls close, we'll have people out there to close that up. So we'll set up, take down all on the same day. And I anticipate that we should be finalized no later than 9:30 PM tomorrow, having these results. Most of that time is just because of transportation needs to different.
Sure.
So they want to speak.
So thank you, Mr. Private. We, of course, as board members, need to at least be down there at some point tomorrow evening to sign the certify the results. I imagine by 8 o'clock, 8:15 or 8:30, you might have.
Yeah, we should, so polls close at 7:30. By 8:15, I think individuals should be pulling in with those ballots on those sticks.
Okay, just to give us a time
Yeah.
to stop by tomorrow. Okay. Thank you for that update. Are there any questions for Mr. Pilati? Okay, any new business? We should stay in recess then because we have the election tomorrow.
That is correct.
Okay, I'll move to go into recess if there's a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hey, thank you, everyone. Have a great week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
You got it.
Yeah, you're, yes, I know.